Okay, hello everyone. I am trying some new things with this camera and this mic and playing music. So let me know in the comments if you can hear me, if you can see me, if everything is sounding good. We have Jim and Alex and Emily in the comments. Thank you so much for being here. We've got a wonderful edit tonight. I'm going to walk you through an entire edit from raw photo to the final image of one of my recent photos. And yeah, gonna be jumping in Capture One and Photoshop. So if you have any questions about those things, let me know. If you are a returning friend, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. If you are a new friend and meeting me for the first time, hello. I'm so grateful that you are here. And yeah, okay. If you're here in the comments, let me know that you are here. Tell me your name, tell me where you're tuning in from. Maybe tell me what kind of sandwich you prefer. And yeah, that's it. Well, I guess that's not it, actually. There are some rules, and the rules are to be kind, and that's about it. And I guess one more, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel and you're here, I don't know why, but also that would be pretty cool. Also, if you haven't liked this video yet, you should absolutely do that, because maybe we can rope in people into this live. So, great, okay, video quality looks good, and you can hear me. Hello from Queens. Hello from Brooklyn. Sounds fantastic. Great. Okay, great news, guys. Okay, well, I think let's get this party started then. I am going to share my screen, and that's my script. This is the photo that we are going to be editing today. Right here is the raw photo, and this is the final version. Keep in mind, when I edit, and I think when everybody pretty much edits, we're gonna get drastically different things. Like it's just gonna happen. I'm gonna try my best to get it to where this was. There was many variations and many steps, so I'm gonna try to go as quickly as possible, but also be pretty comprehensive. I'm just gonna flip through kind of my process on this edit. So this was the first pass in Photoshop and Capture One. This was the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth. So this had 6 passes in Photoshop, and that's not unlike me to kind of have so many different variations and keep building an image to somewhere that I'm happy with. I'm definitely my own worst critic when it comes to editing photos, so yeah, I just keep adding. So I guess with that in mind, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to clone this guy in Capture One, which is a right click. And I'm gonna just start making sure that this exposure is okay. So I do that by adding a new layer up here. If you're good and name your layers, you should do that. I like to start with levels just because this mid-tone is something that I know needs to be adjusted right off the bat. The way I edit, somebody actually sent me a message about this today and asked me if I always underexpose, and it couldn't be farther from the truth. Actually, usually I overexpose. This is, for example, another image from that shoot, and you can tell like it was way over, but the prisms didn't show up, and that was my biggest problem with this photo shoot. So I found that they only really showed up when you had it darker, but I needed more prisms in my life, so I added more in, and that will be the final step of this edit. So yeah, let's go ahead and go back to fixing our exposure here. So I like images to be super bright, and I'm gonna mess with this exposure up, midtones down, and take a peek. Maybe another layer. Now I like to make a lot of different adjustments on different layers because you can change the opacity of each. So if you decide that one thing is a little too much later on, you can bring that down, and I like that. So sometimes I'll intentionally go a little bit overboard just because I know that I can bring down that opacity and it's somewhere nice. So let's see, this one I'm going to actually bring up the black point because I think it's still important to have a little bit of contrast. For me and my style, I like it very light, bright, and airy, but I also like to have a little bit of black still in the image. So yeah, that is maybe a good place to be. Okay, maybe I'll do one more layer, and this is going to be a curve. Now, if you don't play with curves, this is actually a really fun tool that I kind of want to highlight for a little bit. Right here, if you click in the middle, this is your middle grays. And when you bring it to the up and to the left, you're kind of bringing all of your middle tones a little bit brighter. But you're keeping your highlights and your shadows here where they're supposed to be. Once you start moving these things, then your highlights, your whites specifically, will come down. And I actually like to do this a lot in my edits too, but this is more of a final step and not a first step. So we're gonna get there. I think for exposure this is good. And the only other thing I would do maybe in Capture One before throwing it into Photoshop is do skin. And actually I don't think that this one needs a lot. Something that Capture One is really great at though is evening out skin tones. So these yellows right here with the reds on my hand can be very easily fixed and uniform within Capture One. So if we go to these little color balance options over here, down here to color editor skin tone, choose our color picker, and what we're trying to do is pick a color that we like. So if I want my face to be this color red, I would pick that, but I don't. I want it to be, you know, somewhere over here on my cheek. So right about here. Scroll down. Right here is our uniformity sliders, and this is kind of exactly what I was saying earlier of how you can make skin tones kind of more uniform. Just to show you exactly what it's doing, I'm going to pull them all the way up and down. So this is saying like anything that's around that skin tone, I want to make that hue more uniform, and that's not necessarily what I want to do. Maybe just a little bit. Same with saturation. I want the saturation levels to be more uniform. I want the lightness to be more uniform. I kind of keep this really minimal, especially on this edit, because it doesn't really need much. If I toggle on and off, there's not a huge effect being, oh, just a little bit. It kind of softens up the face a little bit. So if we go on and off, also Capture One has a really lovely slider. This is insane. Ooh, wow. Cool. Okay, so that's that. I think that's what I would do in Capture One. And now we're going to take this into Photoshop, get rid of this thing on my closet, and also change the crop a little bit. So let's go right click, edit with Photoshop. And while that is opening, I'm going to check the comments. What do we got? Andy's here. Hello. Thanks, Em. Em is actually sitting like right here. So it's kind of funny that she's here in the chat. She's also being really quiet drinking her tea. Okay, let's see. With all of my edits, is that a question, Taylor? I'm not exactly sure. If it's a question for me, let me know. If you guys are chatting, that's also good. I'm glad. Okay, so we are here in Photoshop. The first thing that you're supposed to do is duplicate your background layer so you keep, you know, everything as is. This is locked and you kind of just forget that's there, because if you make a mistake and need to come back to it, then that's what that's there for. So the first thing I'm gonna wanna do is get rid of this thing because it's driving me insane. So let's get this lasso. This is one way to get rid of things. I think it's the easiest. Just circle it, edit, fill, content aware. It also is like really heavy on your computer processing, so sometimes this will slow down your computer a little bit, just saying. It's always not gonna be 100% perfect. You see all these like artifacts that are left. I get rid of them with a clone stamp. I just I think that right now is a great time for me to mention that there's 101 million ways to edit in Photoshop. And I should have said this at the very beginning, but my way is definitely not the right way. It's just the way I do it. So if you're here and you're watching and you want to learn how I do it, then you're in the right hands. If you're trying to look for the right way, then go follow my friend Pratik, because he knows things. He knows things I don't. He's probably gonna watch this later and be like, shakes head. Okay, so that's gone. I'm just looking around in the background for any other things I need to get rid of, and I don't think they're there. And of course, my computer decides to, now it wants to freeze. Just gonna let it do its thing. Does this happen to anyone else? Because this happens to me all the time. It just decides to take into account the last 100 things that I did and play them slowly. Okay, so now we're here. Okay, so what do I want to do next? I actually am going to play my frequency separation layer, and once again, if you have been watching my videos, mine only works when I have a flattened layer. So keep in mind everything I just said about not working on your background layer, because it's important. So do as I say, not as I do. I flatten mine. I'm going to play my frequency separation, and now we're going to jump into skin retouching. Now, skin retouching with frequency separation is like a hot button topic. I think some people are really against it. I think that it can be very easily overdone, so just watch out. I like to kind of overdo it and then bring down opacity. That's kind of like my MO for most all editing things. So yeah, just gonna jump in. This details layer, okay, I guess one more thing about frequency separation. What it's doing to your image, these two layers right here, is separating the details in your image from the color. And this is really helpful with skin retouching, because sometimes you have a texture problem and you want the color to remain the same, and sometimes you have an abnormal color going on, like a bruising or something that you need to fix the color of. Most often for me, I edit gradients in color. So say I want, you know, a really smooth gradient from highlight to shadow here. That's when I would edit on my color layer. Let's start with details. So I have my clone stamp, and I'm working with a tablet right here. So I have a little click wheel right here that is like changing my brush size. I think that's really, really helpful for me. Okay, so where do we want, maybe we'll start around the eyes. Oh, this happens too. Sometimes when you get a bright color, it's because up here it's sampling current and below, and we just want it to sample this layer, the texture layer. So make sure it just says current layer. And let's do that again. Also making sure that your flow is somewhere around 10% and opacity 100%. Even lower of a flow will give you more subtle, slower adjustments. I like to work fast, and also, you know, they're self-portraits, so these aren't going on billboards. If I was taking my time, I would work on a lower flow. And that's that. So yeah, again, just evening out textures that I think don't necessarily belong. This tiny little hair might be something interesting to showcase the difference between details and color. Sometimes these things surprise me, and it's a detail problem and not a color problem. And I think this one's a detail. Yep. So you can just take your clone stamp and get rid of things like this. I know that to anybody watching that isn't, you know, a retoucher all the time, a thing like that little hair might seem like, does it really need to go? But if I toggle the before and after, you'll see that it really was like a distracting element. And I think that's what we're trying to do in retouching, is just get rid of distracting elements. For me, these veins also gotta go. Very distracting. This wig cap was the bane of my existence this day, so it is also gotta go. How I did this was actually sampling this area and kind of continuing that line up. And then I also liquefied it all down so it felt more natural. So this is kind of going to be a fun time to try to recreate live. I bring up my flow here just because. And okay, and now I'm also gonna, I don't usually edit color with the clone stamp tool because, like I said, when I'm working with a color, I'm trying to fix gradients and be very, very subtle. This is a extreme example where the color of this cap is different than the color of my forehead, right? So we're going to sample forehead color and paint over the cap color. You see? Also, the line where the hair meets the cap, very important for it to remain like a hair texture color too. So sampling along this hairline. Better zoom up. Okay, well, this is something. It's getting there. Would have been a lot easier to just, you know, not have that show, but okay, so that's that. And that's probably it for my details. So I'm gonna go into color and show you how I usually do that. Let's zoom. Bless you.
I thought that was gonna be a quiet sneeze.
No, it was not quite. Everybody say bless you to Emily. Okay, sorry, what was I saying? Okay, yeah, so I better explain instead of just do. What I'm doing is I'm selecting an area that I kind of want the colors to be more uniform. Hands always have these like different types of colors and textures going on, and for me, I don't want them to stand out with all of this different texture and color. I kind of want the face to always be the focus. So I try to limit all of these details by selecting, going to blur, Gaussian blur, and somewhere around 14 is good. I kind of jump around, but as you can see, that just softens the details in the color just a little bit. Yeah, so again, with my lasso tool, I'm gonna select an area that I want the color to be a little bit more uniform, and go. Oh, I remember, I finally figured out my shortcut for the last filter used, which is Command Control F, if you're curious. I've literally been going up here, filter, last filter used, for the past, like, ever. So, there we go. Here's all this. Maybe this here. Did Emily just explode? I can confirm she did not. Emily Teague! Oh my god! Oh my god, that's so good! Like, how have we not thought of that one? Oh, I have to check the comments right here. What do I think about the retouch panels, like Retouch Panel Pro? The only panels I have are the infinite texture and the infinite color, and I actually use them both frequently when I'm trying to be creative, actually. I don't know if that question was geared towards me, I think. Anyways, that's my answer. I like them a lot. Might use them later in this live. Okay, so let's toggle this before and after so you can see what is happening. Very subtle, mostly just like softening up skin, and that's how I do frequency separation. Okay, next step is to probably liquify this, get this to a place that I'm happy with. But first, some tea. Emily Teague. It's such a good one. I'm gonna be laughing about that for quite some time. Okay, so I have a few actions that I like to play and just mix up and always have just to play with color. This one I know copies all of my layers onto a stamp visible, so I'm gonna play that so I can start my liquifying. I'm just gonna say yes to, maybe I'll bring this down. some exciting news is that I'm actually working on creating my own actions instead of dealing with this back and forth of a whole bunch of other people's actions. So this is exciting for me. Okay, so that's way too much. That's something. Let me put all of these adjustment layers and get back to these later. But first I'm going to throw away some because they just take up space and time. Okay, so I'll uncheck that. So here is our image. Again, this layer right here is what I was looking for. This is just a stamp visible. You can also get this by doing Command Option Shift E. Let's do that again. See, and it'll make a layer 1. That's again Command Option Shift E, and it just makes on one layer everything that you see on your image. And it's really helpful if you are editing with a lot of crazy messy layers like I do. So yeah, I'm just gonna delete that for now because we already have this. And this is going to be my Liquify pal. Liquify is also something that I feel like gets a lot of bad rep. I think if you are a creative, it's super fun to play with though. That's all I'm gonna say. For me, I love to liquify hair. I like to pull curls and just make things look way more dreamy and you know how I wish my hair would look like. I also, fixing clothing is also very easy with the Liquify tool. So the fact that this dress didn't exactly fit perfectly right here, I can just swoop it in. And my approach with this, how I'm editing, is just tapping the pen and just subtle, tiny taps moving inward. So right here, tapping and down. If I want to pull this curl, tap down, tap down. Boop. Once you get really comfortable with this, then you can just have all sorts of fun with the Liquify tool. Sometimes I like balloon out sleeves, if that's what they're supposed to do. Oh yeah, but the main thing is fixing the top of my head right here. So let's zoom in a little bit more. And pull this down. So this is going to be a little bit, you know, destructive, but I don't care. The goal here is to try to get this wig to look like it's actually my hair. And I think the way that wigs work is like it sits on top of your hair a little bit, so it's like unnaturally like a ½ inch off your head. So I'm going to fix that with my friend, the Liquify tool. And also kind of adjust these little curls and the hairline so it feels a little bit more realistic. And let's toggle that on and off and see, oh, right here, preview. Yeah, I think that's good. Okay, hit okay. Looking at comments. Nate's here, hello Nate. Okay, cool beans. Wow, we have some more friends. Tea jokes. I don't think anybody actually answered the favorite sandwich question though, I will say. If you have one, let me know. Okay, so we are back here. Now we have our Liquify layer right here and our first color grade pass up here. This, I'm going to kind of walk through my changes and why I make these decisions, if my computer would stop freaking out. Okay, this layer, or this action is from Emily Soto. She has fine art actions, which I got a long time ago, and I have really like morphed it to my style. I kind of get rid of half of the things I don't need and change around the opacity of a lot of things. So to walk you kind of through that, right here we have a kind of color finish that actually doesn't show up too much at the end. Right here is a contrast layer, which is mostly just a curve. You can see this is the curves of the tones that's happening. And I sometimes like to bring this down because contrast and me aren't exactly friends. My favorite part about this action is this sunlight layer. It is like a basically a gradient, which you can make on your own at any time with the gradient tool. If you go up here to the sphere and also choose this under the basics, it goes from your color to clear, then you can make this. Just keep in mind that if you are trying to mimic sunlight like this layer, like this action is doing, then you'll want to go somewhere around like a peachy color. So somewhere around here, in between red and orange, right around here is a good peach. And then with your tool on a new layer, you can just make yourself a little sunlight. You see how that works? And then you can bring down this opacity and move it around. You can adjust the size, play with your, save this. Play with your layer adjustments down here. Usually screen is a good thing if you are wanting to mess with the lightness of an image. So that's that. My favorite part about this. And let's get rid of that. It also has a vignette, which I don't want, so I'm gonna get rid of. Okay, so this is that first pass of this color grade. I'm looking at this image and it is awfully bright. I think right now is a good time for me to, one, bring this way down, somewhere around 40. And I think our neighbors are like, like using a rowing machine upstairs. If you can hear it, let me know. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and do some dodge and burn. I'm gonna do this again on a on another variant, but we are also gonna do it here because why not? Alicia's here. Hello. Wow, what a crew. Okay, I'm inverting this. Oh, sorry, I should really, it's been a while, so sometimes I'm just like full speed ahead. I dodge and burn with levels, so I'm gonna choose my levels adjustments right here. I like to start with editing the highlights, so I'm taking that middle midtones and bringing it up. So you see how it's kind of making all of the midtones in the image a little bit brighter. So I'm gonna drop it somewhere around here. And Command I, invert that mask so it doesn't show up right now. Grab my brush and make sure I'm painting white on black. Make sure that my brush is a round brush and is as soft as it can be, and something large enough that you're gonna be able to see it. I always work with 100% opacity and a lower flow. Somewhere around here. And then I'm going to basically paint in highlights and shadows. This is how I dodge and burn. I think that this makes an image really, really painterly, and just adds this like next level like magazine effect. So I'm gonna start with like body parts and then zoom in. So always hitting like arms, legs, clothing that needs a little bit more brightness. Right here, there's some highlights in my hair that I'm gonna hit. Now I'm gonna zoom on in and bring this flow down a little bit more because it's kind of doing a lot. And essentially, once again, I'm just brightening areas that I think need brightened. This is something I can't really explain, you just kind of get a feel for. But you see there's this highlight right here on the nose, so I'm gonna accent that by adding a little bit more highlight. So maybe a quick swipe with a small brush and then a slightly larger swipe so you get that gradient. Gradient's like the word of the hour right now. Again, there should be a highlight right here on the top of a cheekbone. So I'm just gonna tap tap with a giant brush and kind of bring that highlight up. There's a highlight here on my lip and right over here that we're gonna get. And also getting the eyes. There's a natural highlight right here. I'm just gonna get, and also the area around that highlight too, I think, wants to be brighter. It's also sometimes nice to add a little highlight of the corners of the eyes. For me, that's a personal taste that I like to do. So yeah, that's that. Okay, so I'm going to toggle this, and it's going to be a big difference, and we are going to bring down this opacity somewhere around 60. Yeah, I think that looks nice. Okay, so we're going to do the same exact thing with our shadows, right? So layer adjustment, hit that level button, bring this midpoint down somewhere here. It's a little much. Here we go. Command I, invert, grab our brush, make sure it's white and it has a low flow. And once again, we're gonna zoom out and hit areas that need a little bit more shadow. So the back of my head, this back shadow over here, the side of my arm. Zoom into my hand. This is an area you want to be careful not to draw too much attention to. This kind of seems like it was all one uniform tone, so just trying to make sure that that ratio is okay. A little more shadow around the face. If you add shadow around your face, you're really going to improve face shape. Like if you're adding highlights way over here and under your chin, then you are gonna look like a little bit of an alien. So if you add a little bit of shadow around where your hair meets your face, you are gonna notice a huge difference in face shape. You know, again, really easy to overdo this too. And sometimes I'll overdo it, you know, just to pull it back. So anywhere I think there needs to be shadow, around the eyes, eyeliner, eyelashes, and yeah, basically the whole upper lid should kind of be in shadow too, if we're going for a natural look. Okay, that might do it. I'm gonna toggle this. It's pretty dramatic, so once again I'm gonna bring this down a little bit. On and off. That's great. Just to clean up my layers panel over here, I'm going to select them both, put them in a folder, and name it. Dodge and burn. This one was a color grade. Maybe. Cool. Okay, this might be a good place to kind of pause and go back to Capture One. Once again, I edit in a lot of variants. So what I'll do is kind of get this to a place where it doesn't have a lot of color treatments, and then bring it into Capture One, and then basically make a whole bunch of different variants so I can kind of see what colors work best with each image. This is how I like to edit. Again, it's not necessarily the right way, the best way, but it's how I, you know, I'm a visual person, so I've got to see the colors in the images. Yeah, so there we go. Let's file, save. Hit OK, and it is going to pop back into Capture One. So now I'm going to read some comments while this is doing its thing. Your attempts to stifle laughter will be noticed. Oh, this is your, oh, thank you so much, Alicia, for coming. I really do like a good dodge and burn, you know? You can shape a lot with your modifiers and your light quality. You can shape it even more in Photoshop. That's all I'm saying. Okay, so we are back here in Capture One. This is where we were. And, uh-oh, I have so many variations. Which one is it? Is it this one? No. No, 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 no. Are you down here? Yeah, here you are. Okay. So this is what we just did, and this is where we're going. Still a long ways to go. So one thing I know I did in some of these steps is play with color in Capture One. If you are not familiar with Capture One, it is a wonderful program, super powerful, but I love it especially for color. It's really easy to visualize different color harmonies. I play with the color balance tool over here a lot. I like to start with highlights and kind of play with different color toning of highlights, midtones, and shadows, and then that kind of helps me get an idea of where I want an image to go. So right off the bat, I always check out what a teal highlight looks like, and it is actually kind of cool. With this edit, I'll also take it to like an orangey world too, and I don't think necessarily for this image that one works, so I might kind of go over here to the teal world. I'm just taking this middle point and dragging it closer to teal. These things over here also help fine-tune color, so if you drag the slider down, it'll get less saturated, I believe. Yeah, so it goes back to kind of the center and out more. You can see that little circle going more saturated to teal, so we definitely don't want all of that, just maybe a little hint. Okay, and our midtones, almost always I go towards an orangey color, more of like a skin tone, because it will help balance your tones if you are adding in any sort of teal or pink, which I like to do in my images. Over here in shadow, might bring this to a blue area and play with the saturation a little bit. Honestly, this is such a fun, colorful image to edit. Usually my photos don't have this many colors, so I thought that this would be a really fun one to demonstrate. If I am toggling on and off, you can see some color adjustments, but this way is a little easier to see. Very, very subtle. It's a little bit more reds and teals, but maybe I'm just gonna pull up everything just a little bit. Make it a little bit more dramatic. Perfect. Okay, I'm also going to fix the crop maybe now. Do I want to do that now? Yeah, let's do that now. With Instagram, if I know that this is headed there, they obviously only allow for a 4:5 crop, which is sad. So sometimes I'll crop way in, but I'll leave that to the very, very end, because if we're still doing some edits, then we want to make sure that, you know, we are working with as much image as possible. Keeping in mind the rule of thirds, you always try to want to have like interesting elements and where these lines intersect. So it kind of works out perfectly for my other eye to be there. So I'm gonna hit that and bring this back, I think, into Photoshop. Honestly, I think I might be able to get it close to our final image with one more take in Photoshop. So let's bring that in. Keeping in mind, I was shooting this session, or this photo shoot was actually a test for me because I wanted to work with some prisms. So as you can see in this image, in the final image, there's little rainbows everywhere. Now, I was shooting against my closet and the prisms were, you know, being reflected off of the closet, but for some reason, when I jump in, they were gone. Like, it's just not, it's nowhere. So earlier in the shoot, wow, it's like all the way up here. I have a plate of my camera in the same exact position with the prism showing. So I'm gonna also throw these into Photoshop and use them as my texture overlay so those rainbows show up. So right click, edit with Photoshop. And then off we go. Okay, I'm also just gonna keep this up for now because that's one of our very last steps. And now we are going to play with color. One of my favorite things. Okay, so let's see, where do we wanna go? I might run this action one more time just because the subtle color differences that it makes, I really enjoy. So once again, bringing this sunlight here. playing through. Here we go. Okay, so it does an awful lot. So once again, I'm going to select the things that I don't want. Contrast, this blue tint, film grain, and toss it. A vignette also. Actually, I might keep him, but bring him down just a little bit. But everything else, I'm going to put into a folder and bring it down. Ooh. Right about now is when my computer's like, help me. Let's see what that does. It's still quite a bit, so let's bring it even more. Okay. Also, I think that I want to do a curves adjustment. The final image has pretty much the highlights crushed. So how I do this is bring down my white point a little bit less, and I think that looks fine. I'm also going to maybe bring my middle point over just a little bit. And again, I'm just having a play. I'm really feeling it out. The first time I edited this image is going to be way different than how I'm editing it now. And I think that's okay. Okay, so one other action I really like that I know I was using is one from Lara Jade. She gifted me these, and I am so grateful because they are amazing. This one, Champagne, has a pink tint that I really, really like for really close-up portraits. This is it at full blast, 100% opacity. I almost always use any sort of color toning action like at, I don't know, 20% opacity or less. This particular image, I'm thinking like somewhere around 12. You can click here, by the way, I learned this not too long ago. If you click on or hover over opacity, you'll see that you get this slider. I didn't realize this, but you can just slide over and fine tune the opacity that way. So if we toggle this on and off, I like it. And I think maybe let's try to overlay this prism over. So I'm just copying, pasting the image over my other image, and then I'm just gonna make it big so that it fills up the entire image, because I don't want to content aware. Trying to get all of those rainbows in there, hit OK. And let's remember, I believe I have it on multiply. So when I do this, it darkens the entire image because this image is kind of a gray over it. I don't necessarily mind that. If you want to overlay a texture that has like a similar sort of grayness, you can obviously go to your adjustments and, you know, bring up your tones, bring up your contrast if you'd like. Wow, that was like way a lot of everything. So yeah, you can definitely take some creative liberties when you're adding different textures and things like this. I think that a little bit of brightness is always good for me. And I might do one more pass in Dodge and Burn, and I think that this is pretty much it. So now is a great question if there are any like last lingering questions to throw them in, because we are once again nearing the end. I know that while I'm dodging and burning one more time, since I've already explained to you, I can talk about some other things. There was one question I know I got. People were curious about just workflow in general. So maybe I'll speak to that a little bit. My workflow, especially for self-portraits, is I'll shoot a ton, like hundreds of images, and then I'll go through the entire set and give everything 1 star. If I like it, if it's worth keeping, if it's not blurry, if, you know, I think one day maybe I can use it in something, I'll give it 1 star. And from there, I can cull and tell Capture One to only show me 1-star images. And then from there, I'll go back through every single image and then give it 2 stars if it, still captures my attention. And from there, again, I'll finish through everything and then go to 3 stars. Sometimes I need to get all the way up to 4 or 5 stars for me to find like the one. Sometimes there's a lot of images from a shoot, and sometimes there's like one or none. So that's pretty much my workflow, or at least my culling workflow. And then obviously once I get them down to my 1, 2, 3, 5 images that I want to edit from each shoot, I'll do exactly as I'm showing you here. I first will edit in Capture One, then I'll throw it in Photoshop for any sort of surgery, creative things, and then that's that. Then off to Instagram it goes. Yeah, I find that culling with stars is so helpful, because you can go back then and say like, well, I don't know, maybe there's another image that's similar that I didn't like that day. So much easier to cull this way instead of like just sorting through hundreds of photos every time. So yeah. Now I'm going to put these in a folder and toggle this. This is kind of the beauty of dodge and burn and the beauty of layering subtle effects each time. So this is after, and wait for it, spinny beach ball, and that's before. So when you layer these things, just like subtle groups of dodge and burn, subtle groups of color actions, all of these things, I think that you'll end up with a much nicer image. And also you're just being able to decrease opacity and things like this is so important. Yeah, you want to make sure that you're protecting your images, because definitely sometimes I'll realize the next day that something was way overexposed or way too dark or way too colorful. And so when you save this file and everything is kind of separated and subtle, you can go in and then change things. I definitely don't recommend doing like a clone stamp here. I used to do this. Don't do this. If you Command Option Shift E, you'll get a stamp visible. I said clone stamp, I meant stamp visible. And sometimes, people will do this and then just start to do all sorts of, other edits on top of this. Don't do that. Don't do that, because then all of this work that you've done to like be good and protect your layers is kind of just out the window, because as soon as you start to, do any sort of crazy edit on this layer, none of this will, none of that will work, Just to give you a good example, sometimes I used to do this, and this is like my big thing why I'm saying it. I would liquify later and not first, and this is so dangerous. So say I thought that, my hair needed to be this big. Wow, that's just like insane. Okay, so just for demonstration purposes here, I'm gonna hit OK, and then show you, like if I'm trying to, decrease that color layer, I can't, because then like this thing that I've made very permanent changes sits on top of all of these layers. So if I decide I don't want that, it's not going to show up. So if there's any takeaway, try to keep your image way down here, one of your first layers, and make subtle adjustments to them, and also subtle adjustments to your to everything going on up here. And that's about that, guys. So let me look at these comments to see what is happening. Capture One is fantastic, especially for color. Absolutely. How do you decide how to color grade an image? Oh, Emily, how do I decide? How do you decide how to color grade an image? Oh, I guess it's just like every image needs different things. It kind of like, they talk to you and they tell you what they need, right? No? Am I alone in that? She gave me a thumbs up. She asked me a question next to me. She gives me a thumbs up. This is what I'm working with, guys. Let's see, color tags are good too for color options. Absolutely, Andy. Yes, I also use color tags. I use that mostly if I need outside opinion. So I'll use a red color tag for like a client, or a green one for, you know, the makeup artist. And, you know, that way I have color tags that are like each of my teammates' favorite images, and I make sure that I edit those too. That's a really great point. How do you keep editing after frequency separation without making a stamp visible layer? I actually, oh, what happened? Here we go. Let's go down here. I will demonstrate. Boop, boop. Right now my computer is just not having any of it. Look at this beach ball. Okay, well maybe I won't be able to demonstrate exactly, but so on my original edit, after I did a frequency separation, I played an action that does a Command Option Shift E, the stamp visible, and then obviously the frequency separation, I can't go back and re-edit things, so I try to make like subtle and like a base layer of that, and then start editing on top of it. But that is like the one thing that you can't kind of go back in my editing workflow. But that's also why it's really important to be subtle when you're doing frequency separation. Again, like that's another huge pet peeve of mine, and I think of the world's, is when you go overboard on that. Yeah. Comment from Nate, what's your favorite wig color? I have a lilac one I really, really like. But it also does this like thing on the top of your head, like it sticks up like 2 inches. It makes you look like you have a really tall head. But I really like the color. Lilac is just a lovely color. Okay, well, if we don't have any other questions, then I'm pretty sure, you know, this is all. This is what we got. Let me bring up these images one more time. Some sound effects. Oh my gosh, here we go. Okay, we got this guy, and this is where we were. Ta-da! I think there's a little sound effect here. I hope this worked. Okay guys, well thank you guys so much for joining. I hope you learned some things. If you haven't already, please like this video. It helps me kind of grow, you know, that's always cool. Thank you guys all so much for being here, and in the comments, you all mean the world to me. I'm sending you hugs, I'm sending you love, I'm sending you fruit baskets. Actually, I'm not.